I love just grounding into what's the shared vision? Why are we even together? And just getting clear on, I love you. I want this life with you. I'm so excited to have a kid with you for these reasons. I love how disciplined you are. I can't wait for you to share that with our kid. I love how much fun we have together. I can't wait to bring another, right? So lean into what's working well.
Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. I have Dr. Rose back with us today, and if you missed episode 22, where we talked about sex and pregnancy, intimacy and pregnancy, I invite you to go back and listen to that because it has amazing nuggets of information about your nervous system, about connection, which is what we try and do in birth class, is get you revved up and connected before labor and birth and the postpartum transition hits. Rose is a master at helping you explain where the pleasure and the nervous system and the reconnection all come together. And I know off air we were talking about pleasure. Pleasure is such a word that I even still have to integrate, even though it's tattooed on my wrist, because it was such a taboo word growing up, where vulva for some reason and vagina was not, penis wasn't even, but pleasure was like a cardinal sin or something I shouldn't tap into. And I think that kept me disconnected from my body. And I know that when I talk about that in class, I hear that mirrored, not from the male point of view that are in the classroom, but from the mothers that are in the classroom. So as we're going to talk today, we're moving into the postpartum period, which is basically the rest of your life. It's not just 2 or 3 years after you have children and you're changing diapers. So welcome, Rose. I'm glad you're back.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I thought that we would start today on what I help try to prep for in class. That does not, I'm always perfect at it because this is not why we're in birth class usually, is connecting them before we move into the postpartum. So let's talk about what your suggestions are for how to bulletproof a relationship or connect that so that the postpartum shift change is much simpler for families.
Absolutely. This is such a good question. So, I think a lot of the time when we're on a fertility journey, whether you took a long time to get pregnant, whether it was easy for you, even during the pregnancy journey, right, there is this singular focus of, okay, we are doing this huge thing together. We are prepping for baby. We are prepping for birth. We are getting our home ready, our lives ready. And oftentimes, the foundations of our relationship, the most important parts of our relationship, which is a strong foundation of friendship, can get lost by the wayside. And so, what I love to help people do is really develop some rituals to connect. And whether that's weekly, whether that's daily, actually have fun together, actually remember why you fell in love in the first place. And simple things can count in this bucket. Asking your partner about the highs and lows of their day, asking your partner about the drama that's going on at work, asking your partner what their favorite tree is, what their favorite color is, movie. We feel like we know these people because we've been with them for so long, but there's always ways to deepen that layer of friendship. And I think a lot of the time when we're in romantic relationship with people, especially long-term romantic relationship, it can be easy to stop doing the things that you would do with a friend, right? And stop treating people like you would a friend. I just think about my friendships where if there's disappointments, if there's a season where we're, out of sync, maybe there's a conversation, but it's not this like stressful, constant, you're letting me down, or we're not meeting the expectations, right? And I think there's so much more pressure in romantic relationship. And so when we can take the pressure off and we can say, how can we have fun together? Right? Like what makes us laugh together?
Oh, the fun thing is such what we miss out on. We forget the joking and the giggle tickle fests and the late nights where we used to just cuddle up and watch a movie and then it ended up in something else. And it's just like our regular life has taken over and we've forgotten about the intimacy parts that keep it fun. Yeah, that's a big one.
It's huge, and I think a lot of the time, especially when we're in a bumpy period of our relationship, we can be doing a lot of processing because we're trying to make sure that we gotta pull out of this bumpy period. This is like a really hard season. Let's talk through it. Let's work through it. And that can be good in small doses, but if we overdo it, it's almost like a watched pot that's never boiling, right? And we're like helicopter parenting our own relationship. So I find that mindfulness and presence can help just individuals in the pregnancy and postpartum period because look, we really don't have much control of our lives, but we're definitely going to have a lot less when we become parents. And so, having that mindfulness piece, having that presence piece, asking yourself these two questions of what feels good about this and what could make this feel 5% better instead of arguing with the reality of a moment or a week, just accepting, okay, I'm not going to sleep tonight. My baby is up she's crying. And what feels good about this? Okay, I'm only going to be able to hold her in my arms for a certain amount of time. The heat of her body feels good to me, right? My partner taking over and giving me an hour to sleep, that feels really good. Instead of leaning into, oh my God, how are we going to get through this time? This is way too hard. This is way too much. Because that's where our brain goes.
That's masterful, Rose, because we are so overwhelmed and so tired. I don't even think my go-to is, how can I make this 5% better? I'm just like, how do I effing get through this?
Exactly.
And that just that shift alone, if we're both on that same page, is going to make a huge difference in everything.
Right. And if you have that dialogue and you've practiced that skill together prior to baby, just think about how much easier it is to bring it back in the most challenging moments when you're most sleep deprived, when you're most at your wits end. And I'm just thinking about I drive up to LA a lot. That's where my family is. And I'm thinking about that drive. And when I think to myself, oh my God, I'm so tired. I can't believe how much more of this drive there is. I have to just get through this. I am miserable on that drive when I ask myself, okay, what feels good about this? What could make this 5% better? What music could make this 5% better? Could I stop and just stretch for 5 minutes? We think, I just got to push through and get done with this as fast as possible. We think that's the only way to give ourselves relief. And it's not. And it often doesn't give us any relief at all.
That's one of the best mind shifts. I'm gonna have to tattoo that now on my other wrist. That's so good. It's so good. It's so simple. It's so simple. And my daughter and I just came down from Pasadena the other day, and it was just this long drive, and it was quiet because I get
Mhm.
so overwhelmed with music because Finley has music all the time. And she
Yes.
goes, "Geez, mom, do you ever listen to music?" And I said, "Yeah, if just like you said, I need to wake up or whatever." And she goes, "What would you put on?" And I'm like, "Def Leppard." And she goes, "Oh my gosh." And I'm like, "You can
Ah!
put on your music. That's fine." But I said, "If I want to wake up, I'm going back to 1983. That's what wakes me up." And she was just like, "Yeah, it'll be quiet. It's fine. It can be quiet." She just did not want to go there. And I thought, we both have different pleasure points, don't we? Isn't that funny? Even what's funny is we even pulled off on the road to just grab a cup of coffee. And I had said, hurry and search something and get us a good cup of coffee. And the chick opens the door and her t-shirt was Def Leppard 1983 on the
Oh my
t-shirt. And I just
gosh.
looked, I'm like, what else do you do with that? I was like, that just made me so happy. I was like, it's the little things, universe. Thank you for just tossing that out. Like, hey, someone else thinks Def Leppard's pretty hot too. But she was probably born in 1983, which is why she was wearing the t-shirt, but whatever.
It's so funny. This is a total side note. This is a side quest, but they've seen that the music that you listen to as a teenager actually has like a more powerful response in your brain. And so if you are in a really hard moment, whether during pregnancy or during postpartum, right, and you're needing to regulate, going back to the music of your teen years actually can be a really good way to just signal safety to your brain.
Yeah, I'm sure my brain needs White Snake and Prince, and yeah, but that's what did it for me was that rock. I don't know. I did go into some other stuff, but that's so funny. So, if we're building friendship, we're going to tap into those things while we're pregnant. What are a couple more things during pregnancy that are kind of stepping stones for postpartum that we can remind ourselves of?
So I would say there's three different things that come to mind. One is just like we would practice gratitude with ourselves, right? Practicing fondness and admiration. This is a technique from the Gottmans. They are relationship researchers. They've been studying relationships for decades. But practicing fondness and admiration about your partner, about your relationship, and about your connection can be a great way to lean into what's good. They have this technique of building what's called positive sentiment override, where you're basically trying to increase how good you feel about the relationship because it takes a lot more positivity to undo negativity. They see you need 20 positive interactions to one negative interaction when you're not in conflict. And if you are in conflict, you need 4 or 5 positive to one negative.
Wow, that feels like the deck is stacked against me.
But and if we have these simple strategies to say, "Wow, I really appreciate this about you," or "I'm really fond of this about you," or "I'm really grateful for this aspect of our connection." And if you're in the practice of it during pregnancy, it's so much easier when you're tired and when you're burnt out and when the needs are exceeding the capacity of both of you, right? Even if both partners are coming and giving their all postpartum, there are times when needs will exceed capacity. And so, training your brain to find the good, training your brain to find what's working. And the reason why we need so much positive to undo a negative is because our brain is trained to focus on the negative because that's what keeps us safe, right? But really leaning into that. Another thing that you can practice is trying to notice what cycles you two get into while you're pregnant. We all have these fights or conflicts that kind of repeat. The Gottmans, these relationship researchers, have found that 69% of all conflicts have no resolution in romantic partnership. And
Whoa, so we just keep revisiting them in circles.
we do. And so
Ugh.
if we think to ourselves, I never want to fight about cleaning again, we're going to be really disappointed because we're going to keep fighting about it again and again and
Ooh.
again. Because you pick a partner, you pick a set of problems, and different humans have different values and different needs. And there's specific ways to dive deeper into this. They have a great resource called Fight Right. It's a new book of theirs. If anyone wants to check it out, they can read more about these techniques that I'm speaking about. But what we can do is recognize the cycles. And I always say it's just sun comes up, sun goes down. If every time the sun came up, we were like, oh my God, the sun's up. 4 hours ago, we were happy. It was dark. And now the sun is here. And oh God, is the sun going to be here forever? And then the sun goes away and it's dark again, right? So just like tide comes in, tide goes out, sun comes up, sun goes down. We see these cycles in nature. And so starting to recognize what's our high tide and low tide. Okay, we're in our cycle again. What's the procedure? What do we do? How do we handle it? And so we can talk through in a calm moment, right? I think that these are some of our cycles. Is there anything that helps slow it down? And repair is one of the best things that you can learn in any human relationship, right? And this is going to help you with your parenting as well because you're practicing with your partner. But when we think about, okay, I need a lot of positive interactions to one negative interaction. How do we start to infuse some positivity into conflict, into the cycle? And so, even saying something as simple as, seems like we're in our cycle again. I know we're going to get through this. We always do. I love you, but I know this cycle is hard for us. And so, shifting it from, why are you always like this? Why do you always bring this up? Right? Shifting from blame and criticism to, it's us against the problem. Another thing that I find works really well for individuals and couples is recognizing we've always gotten through this cycle. And the calmer we are, the more likely we are to have a more positive interaction. And so, what do we need to do individually and together to calm down the system and remember that we love each other? And we can get really creative here, right? It could be, all right, we're not allowed to talk about this fight. We're going to take a walk together for 10 minutes, or we're going to take a walk separately for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and discuss. Or I just was listening to this podcast about a comedian, Tignataro, and she was saying that when she and her wife were fighting early on in the relationship, she just stopped mid-fight, walked over to the window, and started singing as if she was in a musical, right? Like, I remember a simpler time. And so we can use humor, right? To a certain
I don't know if that
extent.
would piss me off to the point where I was like, why am I in a relationship with you? Or if I would enjoy the humor and go, oh, okay, that's the break we needed. Oh my gosh. But that's taking a time out in a very creative way.
It is. And you have to know your audience and you have to know your partner, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It could just be we're contractually, if you're married, we're contractually obligated to figure this out by law, right? It could be any type of humor. You could stick your tongue out at each other and you could decide, okay, how are we going to break the tension when we're in conflict? It could be a predetermined, so it feels respectful and so it feels like you're on the same page, but trying to add stops and breaks because it's so easy for us to just upcycle into this super activated state. And when we're activated, our blood is flowing to our heart, to our lungs, to our jaw, so that we can bite, so that we can run, so that we can fight. And it's leaving our brain really quick. And we are not creative problem solvers.
And if you're in a cycle where the makeup sex is pretty phenomenal, it's hard to break those cycles because you're addicted to it. Your nervous system is like, but then guess what's coming? Even if you're not in the moment thinking that, that's a big activation for your whole system. And then I have an orgasm and then everything goes away.
Right. Or even if there's not good makeup sex, conflict, it seems confusing because who would want conflict? But that rush of chemicals, we can be addicted to it and it can feel safer actually than calm. A lot of the time, we have spoken about this in other trainings and podcasts, but oftentimes calm is understimulating. And so we're picking these fights, picking these conflicts because we're understimulated and we don't realize it. But recognizing your cycles is a really important piece, building fondness and admiration and building a strong foundation of friendship. And then if you do get into the cycle, making sure that you're naming it's us versus the problem. And what are our best ways to repair? And maybe this is a conversation you have prior to being in conflict, right? What is there something that helps you remember that I love you? Is it holding your hand? Do you not want to be touched during conflict? Is it okay, we have to take a dance break? Okay, we have to take time apart. So I cool down and so I don't say anything that's hurtful to you. Each individual has to figure out what works for them.
And those conversations are so much better over a nice dinner about, hey, I don't want to get in this again. Can we just talk about this? And really mind your activation points so that doesn't activate something, but just be like, I really want to be there for you during these conversations and let's come together and figure it out. Because once there's a kid involved, it's a whole other thing. And they are taking in everything. They are watching how you handle this and they don't miss it. They don't miss it.
I love just grounding into what's the shared vision? Why are we even together?
Ooh, so good.
And just getting clear on, I love you. I want this life with you. I'm so excited to have a kid with you for these reasons. I love how disciplined you are. I can't wait for you to share that with our kid. I love how much fun we have together. I can't wait to bring another, right? So lean into what's working well. And I know that every single conflict we've had, we've been able to work through. And I know that we can work through this one as well. So leaning into that shared vision, leaning into what's worked well in the past can help really create this sense of safety where we're saying, okay, you're right. There is a lot of evidence that we can handle this. You're right. We've gotten through every single conflict we've had. We don't need to hurry up and finish the drive. We don't need to rush through. We can make this more pleasurable. We can make this feel safer. And we can find a system that works for us because we know that the goal is not to eliminate all conflict. That's not realistic. And we can make conflict more pleasant so that it can actually be an experience that connects us instead of disconnects our connection.
I like that you're treating us all like we're evolved humans. That's great.
It's a practice.
Maybe we should all step up our game. It
It's a
is a
practice.
practice. 100% is a practice. I'm just feeling very immature in certain ways right now. So it's okay. Practice. Okay. So fast forward. We've had no sleep for 2 or 3 months. We have a baby that has taken control of our nipples.
Yeah.
The nipples are out all the time. They're dry, they're cracked, they're sore, or they're just used all the time. I'm touched out.
Mm,
So let's start in that scenario.
yeah.
How do we build our connection again? Because it's been a hell of a 3, 4, or 5 month cycle.
Yeah. So I think that remembering that we like each other, right? Just because you're in a season that is hard, remember it's always us against the problem, not me against you. And I did want to share for anyone who is listening and agrees with care. It is, oh my gosh, I feel immature. Don't worry. Like, this isn't a practice of perfection, right? We can use repair anytime. Even if we lose our shit and we're not great in the moment, we can come back and we can say, I really don't love the way that that went. I'm really sorry that I reacted in that way. I know that probably didn't feel good. And also, you're so important to me and I would love to work this out when we're calmer, right? So there's always time to come back with repair, even if we can't do it in the moment, because it is a practice. But shifting back to the connection piece, I would say that a lot of the time, what worked in the past for foreplay and what worked in the past for getting in the mood, even to connect, right? Like, even to hang out, we're not just talking about sex. A lot of the time, what worked in the past is not going to work in this season. And if you did have a love language of physical touch, maybe we're shifting the love language to words of affirmation. Maybe we're shifting the love language to acts of service, right? Chore play is going to be big during this season. Just think about, are you more likely to want to have sex with your partner if they've cleaned the whole kitchen and you don't have to worry about it and say to you, hey, can I give you a massage? I know you've had a really hard day. Or are you more likely to want to have sex with your partner if they honk your boobs and say, let's go? Right? Like, I'm going to choose A.
Talk about chore play because that's a total kink for me.
Right. It's taking things off your plate, right? It's like, I'm giving you back time to relax and to nourish yourself and to rest. I know you need it. And in parenthood, you both need it, likely. And so there's times where it ebbs and flows, and there's times where you say, I'll take the baby, you get some sleep right now, and we'll switch later. And it's this dance, and it's a delicate dance. But I will say that chore play is huge. And taking care of your partner, feeling taken care of, especially in a season where we probably don't have capacity to meet all the needs and all the demands put on us, feeling like some of those demands are taken off of our plate can feel like such a relief. And the appreciation and the gratitude can go a long way. So, chore play is a big deal. I also find that quality time, and I don't mean like hours and hours, because let's be honest, like, this season is all about snacks, right? Like, sexy snacks, fun snacks, playful snacks. We're talking 5 minutes. Let's just put on a song and dance together, or let's just shake our bodies, or let's just lay on the couch together and be a lump for 5 minutes while we listen to music. Or let's go stand in the sun and we're not even walking. We're just looking at the sun.
They're like little pleasure breaks to remind us to come back into ourselves, our connection. Yeah, pleasure breaks.
Yeah. And if you are somebody who is in complete decision fatigue, maybe you're listening to this and you are postpartum, or maybe you're not. Our society is very productivity based, like capitalism, like very go, 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 go. And so a lot of us at the end of the day are like, I don't have the brain space to even think of what pleasure could look like. You can create a menu, and you can create, maybe it's you take 30 minutes with your partner and brainstorm now during pregnancy, what are some of our favorite things that we could do in 5 minutes, in 15 minutes? Okay, let's write those down so we have a menu. We can either point to one, we can pull them from a jar, but we have this menu created so that when we have less capacity later, we don't have to use our precious brain power to come up with it every single time, to reinvent the wheel every single time.
And I think new parents don't even understand the lack of capacity they're going to have because so many of us are so type A and we manage the world and we think, oh, we've got it. I know I'll be a little tired, but I got it. I've got systems in place. I have food in the fridge. I can organize my life. We're boardroom type people that can run the whole company. The fatigue, not only emotionally, physically, decision making, everything is so overwhelming in postpartum. It takes a while to come back to yourself and you're a new self. So there's shifting of that identity as well. So you're 100% right with the shifting into do it ahead of time, like literally write it down ahead of time because you will not have the capacity after.
Yeah, and even from a hormonal perspective, if you're the birthing parent, it takes 2 years hormonally for you to be back to a semblance of you. So that once postpartum, always postpartum, but really in those first 2 years especially.
So let's move into some sexy snacks,
Yes.
side snacks, whatever snacks you want to call, because there are some sexy, there are intimate ones, there are just intellectually satisfying ones, there are chore play snacks, whatever. So let's move into the snacking because I think those are really quality skills to have.
Yeah. And again, a list is really helpful here, but I would love for people to be making a list ahead of time of what are the things that help me get in the mood. First off, let's take the pressure off of orgasm and penetration, right? I like to think about the spectrum of intimate activity kind of like food, right? Some of our food is like snack food, some of our food is like a gourmet 5 course, 4 course meal. And so we can have delicious food in all different forms and all different amounts. And some seasons, we're going to have more of that snack food, more of that fast food, because that's what we're available for. And so making this list of, I really love it when you kiss my back. Really love it when we give each other massages. Really love it when we just take a couple minutes to kiss and make eye contact. Really love it when I lay on top of you and we just breathe together. I really love it when you rub my head. Really love it when you run your fingers through my hair, right? Whatever it is, what feels good to you. And also taking advantage of daily things that we can do together, right? If you're sending texts, is your partner somebody who really enjoys being told it was so hot when you XYZ? Or does your partner feel pressured by that? Does your partner feel better when you say, God, I really admire how you are with our son? I really admire how you care for our family. And so texting can be a part of sexy snacks, intimate snacks, and building that fondness, building that friendship. And so asking your partner ahead of time, what makes you feel most desired? How do you feel most appreciated? What do you like to hear from me? What matters most? Is it being complimented on your physical self? Is it being complimented on your humor, on your brain, on your effort? What really makes you feel seen? And so asking those questions.
And I love the idea of what doesn't put pressure on you because I'm all about sending a sexy text, but then I'm like, ooh, should I have sent that? Does that mean tonight when I'm super tired, the expectation's gonna be there? Yes, it does, because why did you send that? You know, it's just like sending a boob picture. Why would you send that if you don't expect something to come of it? So, yes, what can we be talking about? By the way, I don't send boob pictures, just so you know, I've never done that. I'm like, that will come back to bite me in the butt. So I'm a little more mature in that area. But what cannot put the pressure on each other? So that we can still connect intimately through touch or conversation, but not have it be a disappointing expectation.
Yeah. I love just having a permission slip across the relationship that we have permission to engage in these activities and have them not lead to intimacy. So, for example, one partner might have a different threshold for what is uncomfortably close to intimacy, right? And one person might be like, yeah, I can stop at any time. So, is it Can we kiss and have it not lead anywhere? Can we touch our upper body and have it not lead anywhere? If I start touching your thighs, is that frustrating if it doesn't lead anywhere? Okay, that's good to know. I'm not going to touch your thighs unless I'm, ready to go somewhere else. Could I touch your back and have that not lead anywhere? And just recognizing that we're building a map of each other, and we're building a map of giving each other pleasure without expectation and without pressure on the outcome. And just verbally agreeing at a time, right? Hey, sometimes I really love just making out with you and having it not go anywhere. Are you okay with that? And then get informed consent from your partner. Hey, sometimes I really love just cuddling naked and feeling your body against mine, but having it not necessarily lead anywhere. Are you okay with that? I love to shower with you and I love to wash each other. I feel so close to you. Are you okay with that if it doesn't lead to sex? And so knowing what your partner is okay with and not okay with, and then we can play in those parameters. And then sometimes those things will lead somewhere, but not always, and there's no pressure. And then if we have their permission slip to do it without leading to sex, then we take the pressure off of ourselves. And hey, sometimes I love to send a sexy text if I'm feeling in the mood, but I don't know if I'm going to feel in the mood later. Are you okay with it if I send you a sexy text and then we don't have sex later that day? Is that okay with you? Making the implicit explicit.
It's such good information. Consent, my gosh, every step of the way. We talk about it a lot for hospitals and our care providers, but man, even with our partners, use your words, right? Have those conversations. And so many of us just didn't grow up with that.
Right.
And it's very vulnerable to open the door to conversations about sex, about intimacy, about what other people's expectations are, about not failing with what they expect of us, and coming to terms with, ooh, I have my needs that need to be met, but I don't even know what they are. And how do I express them? And it doesn't always have to lead to sex, but in a lot of our traditional relationships, it has always led to sex. That's the end goal, right? Doesn't have to be,
Yeah.
but what a more expanded, beautiful relationship when we can touch play in all those different areas.
Yeah.
More conversation, more connection, more consent. Holy cow, whole other level.
I love putting the goal on building our connection, because then the goal isn't orgasm, the goal isn't penetration, the goal isn't sex, the goal isn't to win the fight. The goal is to connect more deeply. And so when we think about, does this serve our connection or does this not serve our connection, we act very differently. And even thinking about, okay, how do we navigate this difference in a way that serves our connection? Okay, I love how connected we feel after we're intimate. I'm so tired, but can I block out 30 minutes, block out an hour, maybe on a Saturday morning? Maybe we have a friend watch the baby. What can we do? Because I love the feeling of connection after we're intimate. I love how we look at each other and kind of have that we have a secret look. I love how things feel easier. We're laughing more frequently. It feels like we don't sweat the hard stuff as much. So, what are those pieces of connection that can motivate us when we're tired, when we don't have it in us?
Yeah, the spontaneity kind of, it's either that's all you have is a quick, okay, we got 5 minutes, or it's gone and everything has to be pre-planned. So be open to that, because it might be a combination of both, but a lot of times it is way planning in the future
Yeah.
to even connect long-term in the way that you used to be able to do it at the spur of the moment. So drop the expectations on that part.
And I don't like scheduling sex, but I do love scheduling time to connect.
Yes.
So shifting that of, okay, we have this time to connect, and what would serve us most? Is it taking a walk together? Is it we're just going to take a nap together? Or is it getting couples massages? Is it just lightly touching each other? Is it having sex? Is it just having a conversation that's not involving the baby or involving pregnancy? So choosing, what do we need? What would serve our connection most right now?
Well, and let's give a real case scenario, Rose. We haven't had sex in 5 months, 6 months. Maybe they didn't even have sex halfway through the pregnancy because that was weird. or whatever, or it was just too uncomfortable. And now we're going on 6, 7, 8, 9 months
Mhm.
where, you've heard every time from every doctor in the world, 6 weeks, you can have sex again.
Mm.
And so everyone's feeling super depleted and like they're disappointing each other. Real case scenario, where do we go when it's been that long? Because I have a lot of families that call me in major conflict, like to the point of, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
I want to just name this is such a challenging time, and everyone is doing their best. And if you're in this situation and you're
It's
listening,
so hard.
it is so hard. And you're not alone. It makes perfect sense that you're here. You've been doing your best to survive this time that really, like, the needs are exceeding capacity at this time. And so you have been doing your very best. You're keeping a human alive that is outside of you, a very helpless human. And so let's just share a moment of gratitude for your past self and how you took care of yourself in this season, first off. Second, what we do is we ground into, why did I love this person? Why did I want this relationship? What was working before, right? What do I want in the future? You figure out where the Venn diagram is, right? And people change a lot during pregnancy and postpartum. We become completely different humans. And when you can get clear with your partner and say, in this season, this is my vision for what our lives together look like. These are my need to haves, these are my like to haves. What's your vision? Okay, where's the overlap? And then we start with the babyest of baby steps, right? So if the goal is to get back to having sex, we start slow. If you want a guided practice, there's something called sensate focus that you can Google. That is a guided practice that can take you through what I'm about to describe.
How do you spell that?
SENSATE, focus. So, what we can do is we can start by just having touch, right? Non sexual touch. And we can do this fully clothed. There's another resource called the 3 Minute Game, which I can also send you a link to, where we're basically choosing one giver, one receiver. And the person who developed this game uses 3 minutes. I actually use 30 seconds because I find it's an easier barrier to entry, right?
It's a fantastic intimacy game. Fantastic.
It is. And so I say for 30 seconds, one giver, one receiver, one leader, one follower. So the leader is saying, I would like to touch you here, here, and here. The follower would say, yes, I'm good with that. And so leader giver would do that touch for 30 seconds and then swap. And then we would say, okay, now the giver is actually the follower. And so the receiver is saying, I would like touch here, here, and here. And the follower gets to say, yes, I'm good with that type of touch. And then for 30 seconds, we do that touch. And then we switch giver and receiver. And each person is the leader and the follower. And the other thing that I really love about this 3 minute game is it helps you develop these skills where you're able to communicate what you want, you're able to negotiate consent, and we're experiencing pleasure for pleasure's sake without any pressure on the outcome. And so you can do that 3 minute game fully clothed. You can do it with your tops off. You could do it just in underwear. You could do it naked. You can choose the spice level. And so by choosing the baby steps and choosing the parameters and using that sensate focus, which is a guide that is like, okay, touch with clothes fully on. Okay, touch with just underwear on. Okay, no genital touch, right? Okay, now we're touching everything. It takes you through this baby step of, I call it painting with green. So it's like the green things are the things that really feel good to us. And when we baby step it, we get to expand our green zone slowly and slowly and slowly. So that's where I would go from there. And remembering that if there is resistance, makes perfect sense. We've lost momentum. Makes perfect sense why I'm feeling resistance in this area. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with us. And there are strategies that we can try. We're not broken. we can find our ways back. Just like maybe you were running 10 miles a week in your teen years, and then in your 30s, you're like, okay, I just tried to run a mile and it was really hard. Okay, you can train back to getting to where you were in your teen years. It's just going to take some training.
I love that. And it is not too late. It's never too late. And I think when I get those calls, it's not too late. And you go back to your foundation. Sometimes you do need some therapy. Sometimes you do need to call Dr. Rose and say, here's where we're starting from. We have an hour a week that we can do this. But that's what gets you back on track. And you are totally new human beings. So you're right where you're supposed to be at your stage of life. That's just, it's hard to accept because we just think, but we really love each other. That this shouldn't even be a thing, but it can be a thing. Hormones can shift on both sides, not just the birth giver, like both sides.
Absolutely.
And what happens if it's shifting like this, Rose? Like, I just am not a sexual person anymore. Like the desire tank is gone.
Yeah.
And I used to really love all things sex, and it's gone.
Mm.
What do you do with that question? Because I know I know you get it.
Yeah. So libido is complex. And when we're talking about our sexual selves, there's a lot that can disconnect us from our sexual selves, and parenthood and sleep deprivation and exhaustion and all of these things can impact, as well as just, gosh, the hormones postpartum, especially if you're breastfeeding, can have a profound impact on our ability to feel like our sensual sexual selves. And so we may need to, one, recognize that sexuality is a spectrum and it changes over different seasons of our life. And so it's okay if we feel different, a different connection to our sexual selves than we did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's also going to change 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future. And so the goal is, one, to lovingly accept where you are right now. And then two, to understand the science behind this, both to offer your body compassion, right? Like, oh my gosh, it makes perfect sense that it's hard to connect to this part right now. But also, when we understand the science, we can figure out what works for you. And I want to just say, if you're someone who's like, I don't feel like a sexual person and it's not high on my to do list, and I really don't, it's not a problem in my partnership, and I really don't want to worry about it, great, you have permission. This is an individual journey. If you're somebody who's like, man, I really miss that part of myself, if there was a way for me to connect back to that part of myself, I would love it. This is for you. So we can use the science of the nervous system. We see that actually people with vulvas, so women and people with vulvas, need a moderate activation of the nervous system. This is different than people with penises. People with penises need to be in like a very relaxed nervous system state. So this is like why morning wood happens, right? So when we recognize that, then we can identify, okay, is my nervous system too upregulated for me to get in the mood, or am I not active enough? And so we can find that happy medium if we're too upregulated and we're like either in freeze and we're like in a scroll hole, we're past being sympathetically driven, we've just slumped. Okay, we can make our way back. If we're like, my mind is racing all the time, I can't stop worrying about my baby, whether my baby is breathing, there's things going on all the time. Okay, there's some somatic practices that we can do to what's called complete the stress response cycle. So if you've ever seen your pet dog shake head to toe and like get rid of excess energy, it's because we all animals have energy ready to fight and flee. And when we don't use it, animals have learned that, okay, we got to get rid of it so that it sends a signal of safety to the brain and we can relax. Now, many humans have forgotten, we haven't learned these techniques. And so doing simple strategies like simple eye exercises, simple shaking, dancing, or taking a walk, exercising, these things can complete the stress response cycle. And depending on your energy level, depending on your preference, we can figure out what works for your nervous system And then the other piece of the puzzle is if you're too relaxed, right? Your nervous system is too downregulated, we might need a little something to excite you in a positive way, right? Stress can be exciting, but so can something a little sexy. And oftentimes we need to lean into what's called responsive desire. And so spontaneous desire is what we see a lot of the time in TV, media, movies, where we look at our partner, we're in the mood, and we jump their bones. All right. Not really realistic in many long term relationships, especially those going through pregnancy and postpartum seasons. Responsive desire, we need to respond to something. So a lot of the time it's body first. And I always use the example of your dessert stomach. So imagine you go over to your friend's house, you've just eaten, you're totally full, and they offer you some food, and you're like, no, I'm good, I just ate. And as they're prepping their food, or as you're smelling, like, oh man, like they're making chocolate chip cookies, and those chocolate chip cookies smell really good, and my mouth is starting to water. And it doesn't matter that you're full, it smells and looks fantastic. And so you're like, yeah, I'm going to need one of those cookies. Before you smelled it and saw it, your body wasn't craving cookies. So sometimes body first, right? We need to see, we need to smell, we need to experience. And that's why games like the 3 minute game or Sensate Focus can be helpful, because we ramp up, we start to build that excitement in the nervous system. Now, the two pieces that need to be in place for us to actually be able to connect to responsive desire are: one, we need a low pressure environment. Think about if your friend was like, really, you don't want any cookies? Last time you had cookies, I thought that you wanted cookies. I made extra cookies for you. You'd be like, "Ugh, not coming over here anymore." Or,
No pressure over here to be off my diet.
right. Or if you have a lot of internal pressure, and this is actually where I see most people, it's a lot of internalized stuff, whether we've internalized it from our family of origin, our religious upbringing, cultural expectations about what a quote unquote good partner does. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make our partners happy, to do what we think is expected of us. So if we're thinking to ourselves, oh my gosh, if I don't eat my friend's cookies, they're going to think I'm not attracted to their cookies anymore, and they're going to stop hanging out with me, and they're going to leave me, right? We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And so if we can recognize that and take the pressure off, or work on taking the pressure off, or maybe ask for reassurance from our partner, making the implicit explicit, that can be really helpful. And sometimes we do need coaching strategies. I work a lot with my clients on this exact thing, right? How do we change the narratives that are making us feel pressured? How do we communicate with our partner in a way that takes the pressure off of us? So that's one big thing. And then another big thing that I work on with clients is identifying how to get your nervous system in a state that's ready to smell the cookies. So I think a lot of the time we think of desire like a light switch. It's either on or off. And I think of it more like a car. And if your foot is on the gas pedal and you're like, I'm trying the wine, I'm trying the lingerie, I'm trying the sexy stories, right? You're like gassing it up as much as possible, but you're in neutral, or you're in park, or the emergency brake is on, you're not going to go anywhere. And so when we can shift into a nervous system state that's like drive, then the gas pedal is going to work. Then everything comes together. And so it's really about identifying what nervous system state you're in. How can I use 30-second exercises to shift my body, to shift my brain, to be open, so that I can smell the cookies and hit the gas pedal and actually make movement, right? Because imagine if you're hanging with your friend, you're smelling the cookies, but you got a horrible work email that's like, I need to speak to you at once. And your stomach drops and you're like, it doesn't matter how good these cookies smell. I'm like completely dissociated and freaked out about work now, right? Where we need to be in the right gear to go.
That's such good information, because it's such a big life change. And I personally felt when my libido was gone that it was my fault, and I didn't know how to ramp anything up, and I didn't understand the responsive either. It was just like before it was no problem, and then it was like bleh, all of a sudden. So I'm sure a lot of it was hormones, a lot of it was all the things that were going on in my life at that time, but no one gave words to it. Plus, man, the voice that's in our heads, because I think I have like 15. I don't think
Yeah.
I just have one. I think I have 15 humans in there going, blah, blah, blah. What about this? They have full conversations with each other. So naming that out loud and saying what's going on in my head is not what I'm expressing. But man, those conversations can get pretty negative pretty quick.
It can. And when we understand the science, we can say to ourselves, okay, it makes perfect sense why I'm feeling this way. Okay, given the messages that I saw in media and TV and my family and my religion growing up, makes perfect sense that this voice is in my head. And I can shift it if I want to. And I can learn different strategies to work with what I've got right now. It might look different than before. Things might take longer or might feel more effortful, but I'm going to find my perfect recipe. And I'm going to, maybe we use more toys. Maybe before I didn't need lube and erotic fiction and words of affirmation and for you to clean the whole kitchen. And maybe that's what I need now. And that's okay, right? Like giving yourself full
Definitely need the
permission.
kitchen cleaned. Kitchen needs to be cleaned. The bedroom, all of that needs to be cleaned. Yeah. If I see a sock on the floor, I'm going to be thinking there's laundry to do.
Just start
Like,
cleaning. Just start cleaning now.
just, yeah, just start cleaning. There's my kink. Do it, please. Well, and such good information, Rose. I know you have a lot of information on your website, and that's how they can get a hold of you to do one-on-one coaching or group programs if you have those going on. But is there anything else on your website that they can get more information on all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have this guide. It's called Let's Talk About Sex. It's super simple and you can do it solo or you can do it with a partner. And it just starts to ask certain questions about what is it that I want more of? What is it that I might want a little less of? What do I really like? And in doing it solo, you can learn a lot about yourself. In doing it with a partner, it can prompt some of these conversations. And if any questions make you feel uncomfortable or awkward, you can be like, oh my gosh, I just got this random internet resource, and you can kind of blame it on me. Feel free to, but you can still get really good information. And so sometimes having something to do with a partner, you can laugh about it, you can have fun with it, you can take the pressure off. And it's different than being like, I really want to talk about sex. Okay, where do I start? So you can find that at bewellwithrose.com/talk. And I'll shoot the link to Care as well. And then the way that I work with people is a combination of pre-recorded trainings, all about, I dive deep into stuff that we were talking about today, the science of the nervous system, specific coaching techniques that we can use to change your narratives so that we're shifting that mindset around sex, specific communication strategies, specific relationship strategies so that we can break our cycles and work with our partner to have more productive conversations, specific partner relationship activities that can help you build your relationship, friendship. You can build your fondness and admiration. These also go into the pelvic floor and breath connection. We dive deep into the anatomy of pleasure. And so you get all of those pre-recorded trainings as well as individual or couples sessions with me. So I'll send Care some information about that. But if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I don't know, maybe this could be something that benefits me and my partner. These are great tips, but I would love somebody to walk through this process with us. I don't want to have to wonder which tip to do first. I want you, an expert, to help us distill down what's our next best baby step, because I don't have capacity to think about all of this. That's when people really do well with this work, is if they want clarity, if they want guidance, if they want accountability, and if they want somebody to just hold a supportive container. And so I also do free 20-minute phone calls for you to get a sense of, am I the best fit, or would something else work better for you? So that those are great for getting clear on where you are now, where you want to go, and really coming up with a roadmap to get you there, whether that's working with me or not.
I know you've helped many of my families, and I appreciate what you do because they come back new humans and they also have more babies. So that's telling me something's happening over at their house. Thank you for being on today, Rose. And I would love to have you back to talk about pleasure,
Yeah,
like just have a conversation on pleasure and sex, because
absolutely.
that's our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So I will let you all know when that shows up. But thanks for being here today. And we'll see everybody next week.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.